The second puzzle for which Frege proposes a solution is the propositional attitude puzzle. But in order to understand this puzzle, first we need to be familiar with some basic notions. The first notion is the compositionality of reference. Reference of a complex term depends on the reference of its parts, like reference of a sentence, which is a truth value, depends on the reference of its parts. In this example, reference of Socrates is a philosopher depends on the reference of Socrates' first part, and the reference of the second part is a philosopher. So the second notion, which is important in overall extensional formal logical semantics, is Leibniz's law. If alpha and beta are one and the same object, one can be in any formula, like phi here, one can be substituted for the other. As an example is that if 4 and 2 plus 2 are one and the same object, then one can be substituted for the other in any formula. Or if the author of metaphysics and Aristotle are one and the same object, then Aristotle can be substituted for the author of metaphysics in any formula, in any sentence, or the author of metaphysics can be substituted for Aristotle in any formula, in any sentence. There is also this extensional context, intentional context distinction, intentional with an S. Extensional context is the context where co-referential terms can be substituted for each other. These are extensional context examples. And propositional attitude sentences is a subset of intentional context examples. So, as you see, Newton is a philosopher is an extensional context example, and John believes that Newton is a philosopher is an intentional propositional attitude sentence example. So, in a propositional attitude, a subject has an attitude, psychological attitude toward a proposition. That's why they are called propositional attitude sentences, propositional attitudes. So let's see substitution in an extensional context. Remember Leibniz's law. If alpha and beta are one and the same object, then one can be substituted for the other in any context. Mark Twain and Samuel Clemens refer to same object. In other words, Mark Twain and Samuel Clemens, not the linguistic expressions, but the object. Mark Twain and Samuel Clemens are one and the same object. Is one and the same object. So the reference of this sentence, which is its truth value, suppose this is a true sentence. Mark Twain wrote Huckleberry Finn. Reference of this sentence depends on the reference of its parts, like the reference of Mark Twain. Since reference of Mark Twain and Samuel Clemens is same, as they are co-referential terms, then Samuel Clemens can be substituted for Mark Twain, as it is in this third sentence. So, since this sentence is true, reference of this sentence is true, then reference of this one must be true as well. And that's the case. If this sentence is true, that sentence is true as well. So we are not having any problem with the compositionality of reference and Leibniz's law in an extensional context. But let's do that also let's try to do that in a propositional attitude context. Mark Twain is Samuel Clemens, alpha is beta. The expression Mark Twain and the other expression Samuel Clemens refer to same object. They are co-referential expressions. So Mark Twain and Samuel Clemens are one and the same object. And here we have a sentence, an intentional, a propositional attitude sentence. Suppose its reference is the true. In other words, it's a true sentence. John believes that Mark Twain wrote Huckleberry Finn. And compositionality of reference says reference of this sentence, its truth value depends on the reference of its parts, reference of Mark Twain. So then we can substitute Samuel Clemens with Mark Twain since they have same reference. There will be no change if they have same reference. There will be no change in the reference of the sentence. But even though reference of this sentence is true, reference of this one may not be true. So the truth of these two sentences does not guarantee the truth of this one. But then there must be a problem because reference of this one is the true, but even though there is the change, I mean substitution of Samuel Clemens for Mark Twain should not make any difference as they have the same reference. But at the end, John believes that Samuel Clemens wrote Huckleberry Finn may not be true. Frege proposes a solution for this puzzle, or let's say a dissolution for this puzzle. According to this solution, in this context, in a propositional attitude context or in an intentional context, reference of a term shifts its reference to its customary sense. So in this sentence, reference of Mark Twain is not that object Mark Twain anymore. Rather, it is its sense. So reference of Mark Twain is its customary sense. Then we cannot say that in such a context, Samuel Clemens and Mark Twain refer to same object because reference of Mark Twain is not its customary reference anymore. Rather, it is its customary sense. So reference of Mark Twain is the way that object that we normally call Mark Twain is designated. Then we cannot make this substitution. That's the source of the problem here. That's the dissolution of the puzzle. This solution is called reference shift because reference of a, say, subject term is the object designated in an extensional context, but in an intentional context, in a propositional attitude sentence like John believes that Mark Twain wrote Huckleberry Finn, reference of an expression is its customary sense. So reference shifts from here to there. That's why it's called reference shift. That's the solution of propositional attitude puzzle. Thanks for listening.